like all you guys equally.
Don't give me that. I can see how it is. The king has favorites. That's really cute.
Ow! Stop!
You have a favorite color? Can I be your favorite color?
You know what? You can't do that back to me. If we're upset, your job is not to get upset back at us. Our job is to be upset. If I get mad and want to eat you, then you have to say, oh, okay, you can eat me. I love you. Whatever makes you happy, Judith. That's what you're supposed to do.
Come on, Max. Let's go get those sticks.
Yeah. Okay. Oh.
I hope you heard me, okay?
Ow!
Yeah, he heard you, Judith. Everyone always hears it.
You think you have power, KW? That's not real power. I'm talking to you. No, not you. I'm still talking to KW.
Don't worry about Judith. She's a downer. Now you'll figure it out. Hey, you should talk to Bob and Terry about it. Come on. King. Seriously, they're really smart. They have the answers to everything.
We're gonna find out what's happening here.
Hold on. I'm coming. Well, what do you think? This is Bob and
Yeah.
Terry.
Do you sort of believe in anything like that, or?
I think Jacob's Cave was.
Bob, Terry, this is Max. He's the biter I was telling you
All right,
about.
this will be a video about John Denver's insanely strange background. And if you've been following my channel for a while, you might know I've been doing these compilation
to ask me
videos of
this
5
anyways.
celebrities who have just really bizarre backgrounds. They come from strange families, and in a lot of cases, they have just these really odd connections to major events in history. And I was going to do another one of these compilation videos, but there is just so much crazy stuff here with John Denver's life, so I figured I'd do a video just focused on him. So we'll get into it, and we're going to cover everything from John Denver's connection to the Space Shuttle Challenger that blew up in 1986. We'll talk a bit about his death in 1997, which has some very suspicious things going on. And we'll even cover John Denver's strange link to the movie Ghostbusters 2. So there is a lot of weird stuff going on with him. And first up, his name wasn't actually John Denver. His real name was Henry John Deutschendorf Jr. And his life starts out on a really interesting note because Henry John Deutschendorf Jr. was born in Roswell, New Mexico. He was born New Year's Eve, 1943 in Roswell. And his father, Henry Deutschendorf Sr., was an Air Force lieutenant colonel who was stationed at the Roswell Air Force Base. And he wasn't just some any old Air Force pilot.
We're
Henry
building something
Dorschendorf
great.
Sr. was one of the most decorated test pilots in all of the Air Force. And in 1961, John Denver's father, Henry Dorschendorf Sr., actually set 6 world speed records in an Air Force jet. He flew over 1,000 miles an hour. Here he is. He was the pilot of the flight. And obviously, Roswell is known as being the site of the very mysterious 1947 crash of whatever it was that crashed there that day. Some people claim it was a UFO from outer space. Some people claim it was some sort of experimental aircraft that the military was testing. If it was an experimental aircraft,
there's been a mix of support and condemnation from leaders around the world. I think a profound sense of shock that this could have happened and that the international rules-based world order has been upended in this way. Here in Latin America, neighboring countries to Venezuela have pretty much roundly condemned this operation, calling on the United Nations to meet, with the possible exception of Argentina, whose leadership is quite close with Donald Trump. There have been protests here in Colombia outside the US Embassy, protests in Buenos Aires, one sign reading Trump, oil is your drug. So I think there's real concern here in Latin America about what America's motivations might be here. As you would imagine, for Maduro, the former Maduro regime's allies in Iran, China and Russia, they have completely condemned this, calling this a flagrant breach of international law. But America's allies in Europe have been more circumspect. They've not wanted to criticize the operation out of hand. They prefer to stay on the right side, perhaps, of Donald Trump. They say simply that Maduro will not be missed. But the hands-off Venezuela movement that is gathering momentum around the world, from Paris to Rome, Madrid and Barcelona. People are really concerned about what it means when the United States says they want to run Venezuela, and of course for the millions of Venezuelans now wondering what happens next. Whit.
All right, James Longman, our thanks to you this morning. We appreciate it.
Find quality products from China on Alibaba.com. Connect with 200,000 plus suppliers and save with factory prices. Smart business.
All right, so this is the first AI news recap of 2026. And even though it's been a quieter week,
hey everybody, welcome back. It's good to see you all again, and I'm going to start addressing something right out the gate. I'm sure for everybody that's coming to this channel, a major thing in your life is kind of really determined by where you get your information, how you decide what you think is really going on out there versus what isn't going on out there, where the deception lies, where the manipulation lies, and what's really happening. And I think for most of us that have a head on our shoulders and two eyes paying attention to what is going on, we've noticed that definitely over the last 10 years, everything has been in a steady state of decline. I don't think that that is conspiratorial to say. It's very clear. Things have not been getting better year over year. They've been getting worse as time goes on. Most of us, feel free to comment on this down below, but most of us feel like this next coming year is also going to be a struggle. For many of us, it's going to be worse. And I do have some naysayers that will contact me, maybe even send a nasty email or two telling me, this is just doom and gloom. It's not very fun. It's not very nice. And I watched, clearly they were watching mainstream media of some kind that convinced them that it's not really that bad. Whereas most of us here on this channel, we take a look at the rising prices of everything, the rising cost of groceries, the rising cost of your rent, the rising cost of your taxes, insurance skyrocketing out of control, yet coverage seems to be less and less and less. And we begin to realize that the motivation behind our government is not for our own benefit. It's just logical and reasonable. That's not even conspiratorial. That's just common sense. If they can cater and kowtow to certain types of billionaires and corporations and get kickbacks from it, that's how we end up with people in Congress that are, millionaires 150 times over, 250 times over. People that there's no way on earth they would be able to become a millionaire unless obviously some form of corruption is happening. And we can point that out all we want, and nothing will ever get investigated, and nobody will ever go to jail.
Right, so Donald Trump has turned Venezuela into a permanent liability for the United States now, and that damage is already done.
The Canadian people are furious after Donald Trump's invasion of Venezuela and Donald Trump's press conference that he held thereafter, referring to what he wants to do in terms of American dominance in the Western Hemisphere as the Don Roe Doctrine. The Canadian people have prepared themselves and are preparing themselves for what Donald Trump's real ambitions are to totally dominate and control the Western Hemisphere. And as Donald Trump said a year ago, turn Canada into the 51st state, turn Greenland into a state, turn Venezuela into a state, take over the Panama Canal. This is what Trump's ambitions are in 2026. If you take a look a year ago, the New York Post cover from
think about the emotions that are associated.
Humans have always had some sense of personal identity. Humans have always organized into groups. But with monotheism, these ideas became the dominant paradigms. They became the lens through which we see everything. They became so fundamental that we can't even imagine a world without them. And together, these three concepts gave us what we call modernity. They created the world we live in today. Now, we also discussed that this revolution created a lot of problems for us. There were enormous benefits, to be sure. The modern world has achieved things that would have seemed like magic to our ancestors. But there were also enormous consequences, costs that we're still paying. And understanding those costs is essential if we want to understand where we are and where we're heading. So that's the foundation. That's what we established last time. And today, we're going to build on that foundation by asking a very specific question. A question that might be the most important question we can ask about human civilization. The question is this: why do societies rise and why do they fall? Now, I know these first few sessions might seem abstract and theoretical. You might be wondering when we're going to get to concrete examples, when we're going to talk about real events and real people. And I promise you, we will get there. But we need to develop the analytical models first. We need to build the theoretical framework that will allow us to understand those concrete examples when we encounter them. Think of it like learning a language. Before you can read great literature in a foreign language, you need to
Hello, everybody.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. It is time for the Daily Dive for January 2nd, 2026. And we start off with Lenny Dykstra, who is not having a good start to his year. The retired professional baseball player faces charges after Pennsylvania State Police
modern retellings of America's cultural history would have you believe that in 1975, women were in the midst of a feminism-driven identity crisis. The claim from some is that the sexual revolution had cracked open the 1950s ideal of the suburban homemaker, and second-wave feminism, led by voices like Gloria Steinem and Betty Friedan, was pushing women out of the kitchen and into the workforce. That's not really true. The hippy-dippy feminist movement was never a big part of most people's lives, and wasn't embraced by most of the country in the early 70s.
Gloria has been reading a book about women's lib.
Oh, jeez.
The reality is that in 1972, Richard Nixon won re-election by one of the biggest landslides in American politics, promising conservative, traditional values. Before Watergate, he was the most popular president of the past 100 years, popular among men, women, and people of all ages. Culturally, most popular television shows of the time were equally traditional. They still featured dedicated TV housewives and stay-at-home moms like Carol Brady on The Brady Bunch.
I don't have to be logical. I'm a mother.
By the numbers, in 1975, 70% of married women with children were stay-at-home moms, whose primary focus was on raising their children and running a home. No one thought this was weird. In fact, polling suggests that nearly everyone thought this was a good thing. By 1980, those numbers were inverting. The percentage of women working full-time, which had been growing only very slowly since the hippie movement of the 60s, suddenly saw a skyrocket increase of 13%. That number kept accelerating in the decades that followed. In between the election of Richard Nixon and the massive increase in women abandoning their lives as housewives was a failed science fiction movie. A science fiction movie that did what all the bra-burning flower power of the 1960s could not. This is the true story of how the Stepford Wives screenwashed women into leaving their homes and joining the workforce. The Stepford Wives was adapted from a book written by Ira Levin. By 1972, Levin had already terrified readers with a film adaptation of Rosemary's Baby, a story about a woman manipulated by those she trusts most. Before Stepford, the image of the housewife was still aspirational. Homemaking wasn't just accepted, it was respected. It symbolized success. A husband who could provide, a wife who could nurture, a family living the American dream. But in 1975, the Stepford Wives twisted that dream into horror when Columbia Pictures turned Levin's book into a movie. The Brian Forbes-directed film took the visual language of suburbia, the spotless homes, polite neighbors, and perfect lawns, and treated it as a nightmare. William Goldman's script did that, not by arguing for a different point of view, but rather by simply saying rational and logical things with a sneer or a look of terror.
It's so awful. If I'm wrong, I'm insane. And if I'm right, it's worse than if I'm wrong.
The movie's heroine is Joanna, played by Catherine Ross. She's recently moved to the suburbs in Stepford from New York and hates everything about it. She says the noise when asked what she misses most about New York.
What do you think you'll miss most about New York?
Noise.
The only time she smiles is when she hears a police siren. Joanna befriends a woman who also recently moved to the area. The pair bond over their slovenly and lazy approach to housekeeping, as well as their mutual loathing of their hardworking husbands. The two women are immediately suspicious of the other ladies in Stepford. These women keep their homes squeaky clean, and their children seem happy and well-adjusted. Joanna and her friend express disgust that these industrious women's husbands haven't hired housekeepers to do the work for them.
It's like maids have been declared illegal, and the housewife with the neatest place gets Robert Redford for Christmas.
Joanna's suspicions mount when she catches a Stepford couple showing each other affection in a private moment.
Oh, yes. Oh, nobody's ever touched me the way you touch me.
At first, she's confused, having recently rebuffed the affections of her lawyer husband, to see another wife accepting physical touch from her spouse. Later, she uses it as proof that something is deeply wrong with her neighbors. When the other women are asked why they spend so much time working to take care of their family, they respond with reasonable and logical arguments such as,
"Well, you see, Ted's doing really well in his scientific research now, and I give him a good home. I really think that helps."
These logical and reasonable arguments are said with a subtly creepy robotic cadence that makes them feel disturbing and insane. Here, let's try it. It benefits my children for me to take care of them, doesn't it? To ensure that the point is hammered home, Joanna is always there to look flabbergasted and shocked as the wives of Stepford talk about how much they love their families. Eventually, while mocking women for wearing bras and pumping up women for dumping all the kids on their husbands, twisted, overtly propagandistic way that the movie should have been a forgotten footnote. It might have been, if people had actually seen it, but almost no one did. The Stepford Wives was not a hit when it debuted in 1975. Despite a modest $2 million budget from Columbia Pictures, the film only earned around $4 to $5 million at the US box office, barely breaking even after marketing and distribution. It opened quietly, drew lukewarm reviews, and vanished within weeks as audiences gravitated towards flashier hits like Jaws and The Towering Inferno. Studio executives expected a provocative feminist thriller. Instead, the film confused critics and alienated viewers who weren't sure if it was satire or horror. While it failed as a commercial product, the idea behind it, the fear of women being turned into obedient, smiling machines, took on a life of its own. Its metaphor was viral before viral existed. The image of the smiling, empty, robotic homemaker was so potent, it entered public consciousness through repetition, in articles, jokes, parodies, and arguments, not through ticket sales. Its timing couldn't have been more potent. Newspapers, magazines, and talk shows picked up Stepford Wife almost immediately, using it as a headline metaphor. It was instant cultural shorthand, pithy, visual, and also a little cruel. By late 1975, Newsweek and the New York Times used it without explaining the film. People knew what it meant, and it was meant as an attack on women who prioritized family above personal goals. For years, magazines like Ms. had unsuccessfully tried to rewrite womanhood around autonomy and career ambition. In that moment, the Stepford Wives finally gave them the weapon they needed to make progress in their agenda. That weapon was shame! The movie's title became a ready-made slur to lob at anyone who dissented from the anti-housewife view. Even those who'd never seen the movie knew what being called a Stepford Wife meant, to shame any woman who put effort into being a mother or a wife. The Stepford Wife became shorthand for everything feminism opposed: obedience, beauty without thought, servitude disguised as love. It allowed proponents to skip the step of convincing people their ideas were good and jump to the part where, if you disagree, you're an evil, mindless robot. In my younger days, I trained as a hypnotist. One of the earliest lessons our instructors taught us revolved around thinking past the sale. Thinking past the sale means getting someone to skip past the decision-making process to focus on the result you want. For example, car salesmen often ask potential buyers to picture the car they're considering in their driveway rather than debating the merits of the purchase. Once you can see that result in your mind, it causes your brain to jump past deciding whether to buy something and move your thoughts into a realm where you've already bought it. The Stepford Wives allowed feminists to get women to think past the question of whether or not being a housewife was a good idea and skip to the result they wanted. The result was viewing traditional female roles as evil. Pop culture followed suit to avoid having the Stepford slur lobbed at it. The warm, nurturing mothers of early TV gave way to cynical parodies like Married with Children's Peg Bundy and the bored suburbanites of Desperate Housewives.
Mom, I'm not the one with the problem here, alright? You're the one always acting like she's running for mayor of Stepford.
What had once been considered noble work became a cultural joke. The idea of staying home to raise kids was no longer admirable, it was regressive. The Stepford Wives didn't invent that shift, but it crystallized it. It offered a psychological justification for looking down on domesticity. If you wanted to be a housewife, maybe you were already a little bit brainwashed. 50 years later, culture remains firmly locked into the pattern the Stepford Wives helped create. The use of the term was so pervasive, it still holds power today. Call any woman Stepford Wife, and you'll get an immediate reaction, whether or not she even knows what the film is. In the wake of the Stepford phenomenon, the workforce was flooded with millions of new workers escaping the horrors of home life, and those workers are still there. With the supply of labor increased, wages decreased, and now even women who want to stay home can no longer afford it. Two-income families moved from the realm of choice into the realm of necessity. The film's attack on family life was a complete and total victory. Generation after generation of children are now raised by daycare centers, and latchkey kids have become so normal that no one even uses the term anymore. The weird ones are the kids who have moms waiting at home with fresh pizza bread after school, and they're looked at with suspicion by their friends, who spend their time after class in empty homes surfing the worst of the internet on unrestricted Wi-Fi systems. Most view these downsides as a worthwhile price to pay to rescue women from the robotic life of a housewife. Do we think that because we've considered the costs, or because we were screenwashed by the Stepford Wives?
I've been staring at this transcript for 45 minutes, and I don't know if
No new wars is what we were promised in a wholly unjustified.
What's up, Vetters? Patrick here with Vetted. Today I have a very special video. This is a project I've been working on for months, and it's about the Nazca mummies. Please hit that like button, Vetters. That really helps out the videos. And of course, if you're not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button. Now, let's jump into this. The Nazca mummies have been a hot topic of debate, with Joe Rogan being one of the most prominent voices to support it.
Whatever that is, like, there's not a chance in fucking hell that people back then had the ability to fake that.
But some aren't so sure of their provenance.
The street finds its own uses for things. That wasn't me. That line you just heard, indistinguishable from my actual voice, was
For almost 18 years, Half-Life 3 has been the unicorn of gaming.
You made it then? Ho ho ho! 2026, dudes. We made it.
The most wanted particle in physics.
Everyone knows Peter Pan, the magical boy who flies through nursery windows, sprinkling fairy dust and promising adventure. But here's what Disney desperately didn't want you to know. In J.M. Barrie's original text, Peter doesn't just lead the Lost Boys, he eliminates them. When they show signs of growing up, which is against the rules, Peter thins them out. He forgets his friends the moment they die, their names erased from his mind like they never existed. He isn't a hero who saves children. He's something far more sinister, a creature that collects them, uses them, and discards them when they're no longer useful. But the most disturbing part isn't the fiction, it's the devastating reality that inspired it. This is a story of real tragedy, about how one man's psychological damage became the blueprint for one of the most famous children's characters ever created. And the real boys who inspired Peter Pan, the actual children whose games in Kensington Gardens became the source material for Neverland, they met fates so horrific that people began to whisper about a curse. It begins not in Neverland, but in a Scottish household in 1867. James Matthew Barrie was just 6 years old when his 13-year-old brother David died in a skating accident. David and James were Margaret Barrie's only two sons. And David wasn't just any brother. He was the golden child, their mother, Margaret's unmistakable favourite, the one who could do no wrong. It was sudden and brutal, a fall on the ice just the day before his 14th birthday. The shock wave that hit the Barrie household wasn't just grief. It was a complete psychological shattering. Margaret took to her bed in a darkened room, refusing to see anyone, completely lost in a sorrow so profound it transformed her into something unrecognizable. But their mother, Margaret, didn't just grieve. She found comfort in a thought that would haunt her surviving son forever. The idea that her dead child would remain a boy eternally, never to grow up and leave her. Young James watched his mother slip away into this obsession with her frozen-in-time golden child. And like any desperate child seeking love, he tried everything to win her back. He wore David's clothes. He read to her in David's voice. He literally tried to become his dead brother. But Margaret remained lost in her grief, emotionally present, but psychologically absent, forever mourning the boy who would never age, the boy who, in her state of mind, had achieved eternal childhood. The damage this inflicted on James Barrie would manifest in ways that make Peter Pan's creation seem almost inevitable. As an adult, Barrie stood only 5 feet 3 inches tall, his voice never fully deepening, remaining high-pitched and boyish throughout his life. In 1894, he married actress Mary Ansell, but the marriage collapsed after 15 years. Mary would later reveal the marriage was never consummated. Barrie was psychologically incapable of adult physical love. She wrote that he remained a boy who could not, or would not, grow up, still wearing his dead brother's clothes, still speaking in his dead brother's voice. His body had become a prison of eternal childhood, and from that prison, Peter Pan would eventually escape into the world. In Kensington Gardens, a 40-year-old Barrie, childless, emotionally stunted, encountered Sylvia and Arthur Llewellyn Davies and their 5 sons, George, Jack, Peter, Michael, and Nicholas. These were upper-middle-class London boys with servants and nursemaids, living the comfortable Victorian childhood that Barrie himself had lost. He charmed them instantly, wiggling his ears, dancing with his dog, telling fantastic stories. The boys called him Uncle Jim. Their games in the park became legendary. Pirates, castaways, redskins, all meticulously recorded in Barrie's notebooks. By 1904, just 4 years after meeting them, Barrie had transformed their childhood adventures into Peter Pan, or The Boy Who Wouldn't Grow Up, which premiered at the Duke of York's Theatre to instant acclaim. The Davies boys watched themselves immortalized on stage while their parents still lived, unaware they were witnessing their own futures being written. When Arthur died in 1907 and Sylvia followed from cancer in 1910, the fiction became prophecy. Barrie became the boys' legal guardian. He had been secretly in love with Sylvia, another mother figure forever out of reach. And now he had her children. These were the real lost boys, orphaned just like their stage counterparts. What had begun as innocent park games had become their actual lives. Motherless boys with an emotionally complex guardian who could never quite be a father. The play that captivated the world had somehow manifested itself into reality, as if Barrie's imagination had cursed the very children who inspired it. The real lost boys started dying young, just like their fictional counterparts who never grew up, but for far darker reasons. George, the eldest, was killed in World War I at age 21. Michael, who was especially close to Barrie, drowned at Oxford under mysterious circumstances at the same age. Michael was Barrie's absolute favourite, the one who most embodied the spirit of Peter Pan. But Michael's final years were haunted by something that makes his death even more disturbing. At Oxford, he suffered from chronic insomnia and recurring nightmares, specifically nightmares about drowning. He wrote to Barrie about these dreams, describing how he would wake gasping for air, feeling water filling his lungs. His letters grew increasingly dark, speaking of a shadow following him, of feeling pulled toward water. On May 19, 1921, that pull became fatal. Michael drowned at Sandford Lock, a notorious spot on the Thames that locals had long called Dead Man's Pool, a place where the undercurrents were vicious and where other young men had chosen to end their lives. He was with his closest friend, Rupert Buxton, both weak swimmers, both just 21 years old. The official verdict was accidental drowning, but their bodies were found clasped together in an embrace that suggested something far more deliberate. Rupert had left behind a note, immediately destroyed by his family, and witnesses reported the two had been drinking and talking about never having to grow old. They entered the water together, fully clothed, at the most dangerous point of the pool. They didn't struggle. They simply sank, holding each other, choosing Neverland over tomorrow. For Barrie, this was the apocalypse. His diary entry that night consisted of just 8 words that revealed everything. Michael gone, all my world gone with him. The line between accident and a willed escape from adulthood hadn't just blurred.
Early
So for a lot of you, you're going to realize that your mom wanted you to be a beta male. Let that sink in. Your mom wanted you to be a beta male. But she'll tell you your whole childhood how she wants what's best for you and that you're her sweet little boy. That's what she'll tell you. She'll tell you your whole life that she wants what's best for you, but deep down, you'll realize that your mom wanted you to be a beta male. And look, I get that this might sound harsh, but it actually isn't. Like, this is a
this went well and everybody's happy, and I'm getting headlines. Yes, let's take over Greenland. Sure.
Well, and as Pete Hegseth said, F around and find out. That seems to be the new phrase. I mean,
Also,
it may well be the Oxford
we
word
seem
of
to
the
be
year.
we seem to be threatening Colombia. We seem to be threatening Cuba.
That
Yeah,
was also a sort of...
Trump likes to threaten. Threatens. Trump needs enemies. That's what he does. And
if we do...
You think I'm in control here? I'm nothing but a goddamn front. Cerruti's run everything since the day Tim was shot.
Hollywood's...
You know what I love doing all this stuff? I love rage baiting Palestinians and saying, bro, this land is promised to me 3,000 years ago. Leave me alone.
Bruh.
This is my land. I'm native.
It literally, I'm literally native. Like, it was promised to me 3,000 years ago.
Yeah, bro. I literally took a DNA test. I'm fucking 50% Levantine. I'm more native than any Palestinians out there.
That's what I'm saying. And it doesn't even matter if you're native or not, because that land was promised to us 3,000 years ago.
True.
It's literally written. Like, if Hashem said it's true.
He's got to be trolling her, right?
Donald Trump threw the main Venezuelan opposition leader under the bus viciously. He humiliated her. Maria Corina Machado, the main Venezuelan opposition leader who many expected would take over after Maduro was captured. Donald Trump, during that press conference yesterday, said no way. He said the people of Venezuela do not respect her. He said she's a nice lady, but she's not capable of leading Venezuela. Notably, whatever your thoughts are about Machado, let's just deal with some of the facts. While Maduro declared her ineligible to run in the July 2024 election, the person who she backed for that election, Edmundo Gonzalez, was widely believed to have actually beat Maduro by a significant margin and actually won that election by about 70% of the vote. So when Donald Trump says that she doesn't have any support in Venezuela and she can't lead Venezuela, she's a nice lady, but she doesn't know what she's doing. I mean, Donald Trump has no clue what he's talking about, but he's really throwing her under the bus. I want to get into why in a moment, but it should be noted that she did everything to get under Donald Trump's good graces. I mean, she kissed the ring, she bent the knee, she did the Mar-a-Lago humiliation ritual. When she was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, she goes, I dedicate this Nobel Peace Prize to the brave and courageous Donald Trump, and this is for you, Donald, and for all you promised to do for the people of Venezuela. Remember, she did that. She went on this humiliation ritual tour. She went on state regime media Fox. She went on Don Jr. Jr.'s podcast. And, she believed that she was positioned to be the leader of Venezuela when Maduro would be taken out. But Trump said, no way, no how. Let's explain why, and let me walk you through the humiliation ritual. Donald Trump doesn't want a democracy in Venezuela. He doesn't want an opposition leader who's going to open up the markets of Venezuela to other countries and have a free market and a democracy. That's not what Donald Trump wants. What Donald Trump wants is an authoritarian regime in there, but one that he controls. Trump doesn't want other nations trading with Venezuela. Trump wants the oil for himself, and then he wants to use it as a tool in this game that he believes he's playing with Putin and Xi Jinping, where they cut up the globe and they give each other the resources that they steal from other countries in their spheres of influence. Trump's not looking for a democracy in Venezuela. So for all of the people saying, oh, Donald Trump supports democracy, no, he doesn't support democracy. And he had an opportunity to show if he did, but he was actually trying to cut a deal with Venezuela's VP, who was Maduro's number 2, who's now the interim leader, Delcy Rodriguez. And Delcy Rodriguez rebuked Trump. Trump was saying, I'm trying to do a deal with Delcy, the VP. And Delcy Rodriguez says there's only one true leader of Venezuela, and that's Maduro. And she said that what Trump did was not legitimate, and she's not supporting Trump. So Trump threw Machado under the bus. He tried to prop up Delcy Rodriguez. She rejected him, and others in Venezuela rejected him as well. That's the status of things as they stand right now. So let's go through this humiliation ritual, though, of Machado. So here's when Machado won the Nobel Peace Prize, being Venezuela's main opposition leader. And here she dedicates her Nobel Peace Prize to Donald Trump. Here, let's play this clip.
They decided to dedicate it to President Trump because he deserves it. Because not only has he been involved in only a few months in solving 8 wars, but